what we're going to talk about. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes. Is that correct, Denny?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So this whole month and part of last month, we've had this brilliance that we've been talking about. And we've been exploring how each and every one of us came into this life to shine bright like a diamond, to be brilliant, to let our magnificence shine through. That is why we incarnated, truly. Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes it gets covered up. But it was to get us all on the same page and to set the tone for a final conversation. This is the end of that series on that topic. So I want to do a very brief review. Easter Sunday is when we began, and that was, the theme was Arise and Shine, which many of us, I know all of us, are doing. Then on each of the following weeks, we followed by looking at the 4 C's of a diamond, right? Okay, so going to go over it real quick. This is the diamond rating scale. So the first thing we talked about, was the cut of the diamond. How are we cutting away the things that no longer serve us in life? And we went into that kind of an analogy, cutting away the dull, shining it up so that we can show up as bright lights. And then we looked at the clarity. Okay, so the clarity is, how can we be clear, really clear, vessels for the expression of the divine energy that moves through each and every one of us? And that is the truth, this divine essence. So we need to be clear to allow it to have its way with us. Clarity is important in all ways, and especially in our communication. Last week, we looked at the color. I gave everybody a color wheel. And the color of a diamond, right? And we explored the qualities of God that we color our lives with. I gave you a diagram, and in the very middle was a clear diamond, and then there were all the colors, I guess the primary colors. And we looked at ourselves as that bright diamond, and then we looked at the qualities that each color represented and how we fill and color our lives with those qualities, or lack of, The final quality on that diamond rating scale, and the final C we will explore today, is carat. The more carats a diamond is, the more valuable it is. So to introduce our theme of carats, there's a saying from someone relatively famous or infamous, and she said, "I never worry about diets. The only carats I care about are in a diamond." And that is Mae West. One of my absolute absolutely favorite persons to quote from. Here's about carrots you eat, right? But we're talking about ourselves now. We're making this analogy, so we're going to ease into, how big is our carat of conviction. That's what we're getting into today. Because larger diamonds are rarer than smaller diamonds, and their value rises exponentially. As the diamond gets larger or weighs more carats, our application of this quality of diamonds today is this. What carat is your conviction that you are a walking, talking manifestation of the divine? And do we really embrace that God is all love and law? All love and law. Do we understand what that means? Love points the way. Love is the nature of this divine energy that we call God, that we call Source, that we call infinite potential. It is that love that propels life itself. And then you have the law. The law takes what is impressed upon it and brings it into demonstration, manifestation in our lives. And so we have experiences. We have experiences. What carat is your trust in yourself as an expression of God's love and law? The larger it is, the more value you will bring to your life. What carat is your believing in the allness, the wholeness, and the perfection of God's love and law? The bigger it is, the more valuable your life experience will be. The size and weight of your conviction or your trust and belief can make all the difference in the value of your life. And we must really embrace the concept that our life is valuable. We get to live it. No one else can live it through us. We get to live it. And it's time to take ownership of our lives yet again. And I've decided, came upon me this week, to call all of these talks that we do on Sunday, what was it? Spiritual motivational talks, because that's what I want them to be. I want to be motivated, so I'm sharing it with you. I want to feel that motivation. I want to take a look at where I can expand and add to the carats of my conviction. The size and weight of your conviction, of your trust, and of your belief can make all the difference in the value of your life. And I know it is so easy to say, God is so good, right? We say that, God is so good. My conviction that I am a walking, talking manifestation of God's love and law is strong when things are going well. We can say that my trust in myself as an expression of God's love and law is so large when everything's going well. And my belief in the allness and the wholeness and the perfection of God's love and law is so great until the you-know-what hits the fan. And you all know what the you-know-what is. So it's gonna happen. We are having a human experience, right? So it's gonna happen. But the quicker we bring ourselves back to alignment with the fact that God is so good, that God is the source of my being, God is the divine energy that is eternal within me, the quicker that we shift the whole entire scenario, because most of you know the scenario is made up, if you're like me, in your head. We make up stories. All right, something happens. Something happens in life. And it doesn't feel good at all. It's very challenging. But then we take that something, we take that thing, and if you're like me, and we keep adding acts to it like a play. We keep adding to the story till it becomes this humongous thing that never even really was. If you're guilty of that, or not guilty, but if you're in that flow, it's like, take that breath, center yourself, and know that God really is so good, and that the only source and supply of all your good is that divine energy, and you get to choose. No one can choose for you. But if our conviction, if our trust, if our belief cannot withstand the appearances of challenges, then what good is it? What good is it? It all sounds great. We read these inspiring books, we listen to these inspiring talks, we go take workshops, but we got to use it. We have to implement it. So it begs the question, how strong was your belief in the first place? And that's what we work on. So I'm going to illustrate this with a demonstration that you will get to follow along with. It's not too long, but just take this one in. So a teacher was presenting to his students the law of the pendulum. You all are familiar with that? I know you probably are. Okay. Which is this: a pendulum can never return to the same point from which it was released. Think of the pendulum, right? Most of the friction and gravity when the pendulum returns is always going to fall short of its original start point. Each time it swings, it makes less and less of an arc until finally it's at rest. That's the law of the pendulum. To demonstrate this law, now you got to teach him. He's teaching this to his students, right? He puts a 3-foot string to a child's toy top and secured it to the top of a blackboard with a thumbtack. He then pulled on the top of one side and made a mark on the blackboard as he let it go. So each time it swung back, in fact, it fell short of the previous swing. The teacher made a new mark every time. It took less than a minute for the top to complete its swing and come to rest. When he finished his demonstration and the markings on the blackboard proved his thesis, the teacher then asked all of the students, did they believe the law of the pendulum? He showed it to them. Everyone unanimously said yes. The students thought the demonstration over, and in reality, they thought it was finished, but he had just begun. I found the story on the internet, so I don't know how you lifted it, but all things are possible, and it's a good story. So from the steel beams in the middle of the classroom, there was a large, crude, but functional pendulum. It was 250 pounds of metal weight tied to 4 strands of 50-pound test parachute cords. The teacher invited a student to sit in the chair several yards away from the pendulum, with the back of his head against the wall. The teacher then brought the 250 pounds of metal up to the student's nose, right? It's a pendulum. Holding this huge pendulum, just a fraction of an inch from the student's face, he once again explained the law of the pendulum, which the students had all unanimously agreed to only moments before. And then he had the student sitting in the chair, and he said, if the law, teacher said to the student, if the law of the pendulum is true, then when I release this massive metal, it will swing across the room and fall short of the release point. Your nose will no longer be in danger. After that final restatement of this law, the teacher looked at the student and he asked him, do you believe the law is true? There was a long pause. Huge beads of sweat were upon the student's face. But he weakly nodded and said yes. The teacher released the pendulum, and it made that swooshing sound as it raced across the room at the far end of the swing. It paused momentarily and started back. And as it neared him, the student moved faster than he had ever moved in his entire life. He literally dived out of the chair. And the returning pendulum, at which point the teacher asked the class, does he or does he not believe in the law of the pendulum? The students unanimously answered no. So I say again to all of us, is the weight of our conviction, trust, and faith. If that weight cannot withstand the appearance of a challenge, then really, what good is it? What good is it? It's so easy to be in that flow and to make these statements when everything's going good. Then can we say it when things are not going good? And I'm going to get into that. Can we say it when they look like they're really, fear is entering? And so I have many favorite quotes from Science of Mind. But in this book, Ernest Holmes wrote this, and it's one of my favorite quotes from Ernest Holmes. He wrote this. Listen to this. Stay with the one and never deviate from it. Never leave it for a moment. Nothing else can equal this attitude. To desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that you do not know the truth. When things look the worst, that is the supreme moment to demonstrate to ourselves that there are no obstructions to the operation of truth. When things look their worst is the best time to work. The most satisfying time. The person who can throw himself into this limitless sea of receptivity, having cut loose from all apparent moorings, is the one who will always receive the greatest reward. When things are not going the way we want them to go, and we practice these spiritual teachings that we teach in the classes, that we do here on Sundays, that we should be living our lives in. When we do that, everything changes for us. For there is one support, and God is the source of all my good. God, the universe, always has my back, is infinite in its supply. Jesus, our master teacher, the way shower, said 4 times in the Bible, "Be ye not afraid." Now it's interesting, this is interesting, that 3 of the 4 times he said this, he said it to his disciples, which all metaphysical Bible teachers and classes will tell you the disciples are facets of our minds, the facilities of our mind, the faculties. The discipline, the disciples metaphysically represent, think of this is cool, all different aspects of our thoughts. Each one represents all of our different thoughts. The committee, if you will. We can call the disciples the committee. We have a committee in our head. What a committee it can be. Now here's something interesting to note about the construction of the Greek language, which is the first translation from the Aramaic. That's why we love when Dale Allen Hoffman comes here, because he speaks and understands fluent Aramaic. So he skips right over the Greek, you know, so, but we are not going to do that. So the Greek part of it. So you're going to stay with me on this one? I'm trying to get to a point here. Yeah, all right.
Yes, we're with you.
I got you warmed up with that pendulum story. There's a lot of energy here, but it's worth it. There is a part of this speech in Greek, right? The Greek language called the present imperative, which has a particular meaning which does not exist in the English language. When a commandment was given, okay, in the present imperative, it meant to be a commandment. When it was meant to be a commandment, it meant this: do things I am commanding now, and do it continuously and as a steady practice into the future. That's what all of that meant, but we don't have that translation. We don't get that from our language. For example, if someone says, "Be still," does that mean just in this moment to be still? You tell that to a child. They live in the moment. But what it really meant in Aramaic is be still in this moment and practicing it through every moment going forward. But when something in Greek was constructed in the present imperative, they knew what it meant. It meant this: do this thing now and keep doing it as a steady, continuous practice in the future. So be still. Be still and know that I am God. Not just in this minute, but in every minute. Bring ourselves back to it when we forget. We can do that. There's another important point about the present imperative tense. When said in the negative, such as "be ye not afraid," there's an additional meaning. It means stop doing what you've been doing. Don't do it now, and don't do it in the future. Be ye not afraid. Could we live that every day? Wow. So specifically, Jesus said 4 times, stop being afraid like you have been. Don't be afraid now. Don't be afraid as a steady, continuous practice in the future. Be ye not afraid. And the reason he could say this is because he intrinsically knew that the Father and I are one. He knew this, he lived this. That's why we call him the way shower, because he took the teachings. He was a New Thought teacher, which is what we are. And he took these teachings and he lived them and he taught them. And it was so away from the organized religion that was in existence that kept people in that fear that they had to crucify him. They had to eliminate him because he was saying, you and you and you have power. You have the power within you. You don't have to look to some outside force. Look within and connect that withinness to the allness, the oneness of the divine. He completely trusted in himself. And that's an expression of God's love and law. And he had complete belief in the allness, the oneness, the unity, the perfection of that love and that law. That is why he could say to us, stop being afraid like you have been. Don't be afraid now. Don't be afraid as a steady and continuous practice in the future. Now that idea is worth its weight in diamonds. Right there. How many carats is that belief? Huge. That's the belief that we want to embody. That's the belief we want to practice. I believe in being very specific and concrete. So here's some examples of some specific ways that we could practice this. It means that you know that when a job ends, there's a better one that's waiting for you. It means that when there's an illness that strikes, that there is a newness, a new way of a rebirthing, a re-entering the world with different thoughts. I know as I was healing my spine, there was so much introspection, so much expansion that took place. I am so grateful for all of that pain, years of pain. I'm so grateful for it because it was a rebirthing into knowing that the universe most certainly does support me. It means if your finances look really low, there's an ebb and flow. The universe is not stagnant. God is not stagnant. There's an ebb and flow of life. And source is always source. God is my source and supply of all good. God is my source and supply. I say this all the time to myself. I really do. It is an incredible thing to keep bringing ourselves back to. It even means that when you die, and notice I didn't say if. When you die, because you're all going to die. When you die, don't be afraid of it, by the way. It's beautiful, right? I don't remember it, but from what we believe, it's the light and love of God that we are embracing. It's just another experience of life. It is. There is no death in God, right? Anyway, know that the life still flows on with the currents of eternity because we are eternal beings. It means all of those things when we stay with the one and never deviate. When we never leave it for a moment. Or we might leave it for a moment, but we return back to it. We return back to it. Nothing else can equal that attitude. When we can be the person who throws him or herself with complete abandon into the limitless sea of receptivity. This is what we're talking about. This divine energy, this omnipresence, omnipotent energy is always with us. We are it. We are it. So what I want to get across and end right now with is how large is your carat of conviction? How large is it? Do you really believe this stuff? And so that's why Ernest Holmes said that when things look like they're really big challenges and we're going through a lot, that's when we practice this stuff. And let me tell you, when you practice it, and I know those of us, our practitioners especially, those of you who practice this in those times of grief, of loss, of complete financial ruin, as we say, that they have gotten the greatest rewards, and it doesn't go away. That stays with you forever. That lesson that you learned, if you choose to learn it, stays with you. And so your carat gets larger and larger. And that's what I have for you today. Okay.